Tell us about this deal. Switchgears, what are they? How do they fit into the power station?
Well, switchgears is what makes the power station to work. You know, you can have all sorts of equipment, turbines, boilers, but at the end of the day, you also need to flick the switch, and that's where the switchgears actually come in.
So it's a key piece of equipment for these power stations. Now, I presume you came up against tough competition for the tender. Why were you awarded it?
Well, as you said, it was a competitive bid, and we do believe that the technology that we put through, and as well as the whole package in terms of affordability, is what actually made us to be successful.
The switchgear is going to be assembled here in Midrand, so that's good as using local capacity. Will the components be built here? Are you going to import some of those components?
Well, it's a mixture. There are some components that we source internationally, but we source quite a lot of components in South Africa.
Any idea of the split just in the components?
Well, I wouldn't say, but I guess we will, in this particular case, more than 50% of the components will be sourced locally.
How about the timing for these switchgears? When are you going to get started on building those? When are they needed at the power station?
Well, it depends on the build program that Eskom has put forward. The first part will be on what they call the common plant, which we should be the first one to go in, and we hopefully by the beginning of the year have it sorted out.
Do you have the expertise here in South Africa for these switchgears? Of course, you are a global company, you're all across the world. Will you be bringing more expertise into the country?
Well, we will use local expertise. Our current employees have a vast experience in terms of this particular equipment. But what we're going to do as part of the program is going to be able to train more technicians and engineers and electricians to be able to be averse with this particular technology.
Black economic empowerment, so does that get a boost from this deal?
Well, we are a BEE level 5 accredited business. As part of this deal, we, in terms of our supply base and the enterprises that we do develop, we require them to also be BEE accredited.
How about the potential for similar contracts if the Medupi one is successful? Of course, we know there are other power stations being built here and potentially more across Africa.
Well, we're planning to use the facility in Midrand as a springboard for Sub-Sahara. Yeah, we do looking at opportunities in South Africa and as well as the rest of the continent.
And of course, we have power supply, rising tariffs, problems we're facing here in South Africa right at this moment. But of course, they are going to be becoming relevant elsewhere across the continent. How are you positioning yourself in the energy sector in South Africa or Southern Africa and Africa?
Okay, we provide a vast amount of technologies in the power generation, except hydro. So we are in the alternative energy space. In terms of wind, for example, and we also have a nuclear capability. So when, depending on what the customer requirements are, we'll be able to provide the appropriate technologies.
And of course, we do know that nuclear power stations are on the cards for South Africa as well. Is this something that would interest you going forward? Well,
we're looking at the space. There are other players in the market, and we're looking to see how the whole process rolls out. And if we believe it's right for us to participate, we'll definitely do.
How about public-private partnerships? That's something that's becoming much more relevant in South Africa across most sectors, across healthcare, I presume in the energy sector as well. I mean, do they have a solution for this for you? Private sector coming in and offering their expertise in projects like these?
Well, what you find is there's always a mixture between the two. The private sector has a capacity that the public sector doesn't have. And we do believe that the mixture of the two will be able to help, especially in South Africa, to roll out some of the infrastructure programs that we are embarking on as a country.
We've talked a lot about the energy sector. How about the other sectors that you're active in South Africa and Southern Africa?
Well, we have quite a varying portfolio of products and solutions that we do offer. We, end of last year, we're successful in a bid to supply Transnet with about 100 locomotives. And we also involved in all other sectors in the water purification business, for instance. In the healthcare, we currently are in talks with people in terms of the PPPs for the healthcare that have been announced.
Mm-hmm. So also growth you're seeing in your business in South Africa?
Well, we in terms of South Africa and in the continent, we're seeing a big growth. In fact, in the continent, we've grown 4+ in the last 3 years. So.
infrastructure development is big on the cards in South Africa. It's starting to get off the ground, and we expect a lot more involvement or movement in the next 2 or 3 years. How are you positioning yourself, perhaps, for that infrastructure development outside of the Eskom power stations?
Well, we are an infrastructure business. We cover quite a whole array of technologies and products that we could offer. So we're keeping our fingers on the taps for all the opportunities that are coming about in South Africa and as well as for the rest of the continent, whether they are in water, in power generation, in the rail industry, in healthcare. So we're putting our fingers on the pulse for that.
And just repeat, are you ready to get going on these switchgears almost immediately?
We're ready to go on.